Hey there, Lodge members. Welcome back to the Ancient and Esoteric Order of the Jackalope. Number 13 here. As you all know, when you meet the Grand Jackalope's secret criteria, we throw a bonus episode at you between series. And y'all have been knocking down secret criteria left and right, so lucky you. Here's a story about Dungeons & Dragons. After some shots, of course. Praise be to the Grand Jackalope in her mysterious ways. Whew! Oh, that's got a good burn. Grandiose but straightforward, presented by number 13. There used to be this idea that people who played role-playing games were stiff, humorless, super serious types. The sort of person who was obsessed with rules, had difficulty telling the difference between fantasy and reality, and unable to take a joke. But that's not true. The hobby has had humor in its DNA from the very beginning. The original Dungeons & Dragons sourcebooks were packed full of in-jokes, references, and humorous illustrations. Gamer magazines like Dragon and the Space Gamer always made sure to set aside a few pages for cartoons and humor columns. Heck, every spring, Dragon featured an April Fool's supplement with every sort of silliness you could imagine, and sometimes they even published silly articles out of season. Which is a long way of saying that if you were subscribing to Dragon in September 1988, you were in for a treat. The editors had decided to run a letter column featuring the sort of utterly bizarre letters that usually got thrown right into the circular file. And that first letter? Well, it was a doozy.
Dear Dragon, recently my AD&D game character Waldorf, a 358th level magic user, created the nuclear bomb. Due to this action, all of Greyhawk has been utterly obliterated except for a 3x4 mile island with a castle called Castle Waldorf. All creatures from the monster manuals were destroyed due to large amounts of nuclear fallout. All the deities work in a salt mine under Waldorf's castle. I would greatly appreciate it if everyone would mail their character sheets to me so that I may tally up Waldorf's experience. All the game manuals and modules are now totally false and untrue. Any profit made from TSR's merchandise from this day onward should be mailed to Waldorf's castle. In gold pieces, of course.
Of course. However, you forgot to enclose a self-addressed stamped envelope. We regret that Waldorf must lose the experience points in gold for his victory. It was hilarious, and probably requires a bit of explanation for you non-D&D players. Waldorf here is the iconic example of a certain sort of D&D character. His power levels are insane. Most characters never even make it to level 20, and even the gods themselves tend to top out at level 100 or so. Ironically, the sort of people who play these crazy over-the-top characters tend to be the most deadly serious of all, with no room for humor in their lives. All they want is more power and more awesomeness, and it just keeps accelerating to a point where their accomplishments move past legendary to ludicrous. So to see one of these power gamers with a character who could destroy galaxies with a thought, defeated by a picayune technicality in the magazine's submission rules? Well, it was hilarious. The editors even got a little rule of threes action in there by making Waldorf a running joke in the responses to the next couple of letters.
Dear Dragon, my friends and I have been playing the AD&D game for over 6 years now. Our major characters have levels in the millions, maximum scores for almost every ability, and can obliterate 5 planes of the abyss in a round. We have moved on to other games and have developed other major characters in those games. We have created creatures that are barely a challenge for our characters. After a while, role-playing got boring. I haven't played for almost 2 months. I would like to know how I can have fun with these high-level characters.
Perhaps you should meet Waldorf.
Dear Dragon, stop making your game. I killed all the monsters.
All except Waldorf. Funny stuff. Anyway, that was just one page. The rest of the magazine was filled with the important stuff. A system for creating realistic weather for your fantasy world, pseudo-historical information about how medieval fairs and tournaments were structured, and how to carve up monsters for fun and profit. That was it, right? Well, not quite. Something about Waldorf struck a chord with Dragon's audience, and letters about him started pouring in. So the editors figured that if something was funny the first time, it would be just as funny the second time. 1 year later, in September 1989, the magazine ran a letters column filled entirely with letters they had received about Waldorf. The first one was easily the best.
Dear Dragon, please tell Waldorf that I have successfully completed making my savings roll and ask him how much damage I took from the atomic bomb.
It was perfect. A deadpan response to the situation as if it were just another part of the game. Short and sweet, only 134 characters long, like a carefully crafted tweet or a winning little Lytton entry. When I first read that, I laughed for minutes. The other letters in that issue were maybe not as carefully crafted. You see, there was a certain segment of the magazine's audience who were upset that Waldorf was hogging all the spotlight. Not because he was silly and ridiculously over the top, but because their own characters were so much cooler and more powerful and could totally beat the snot out of that upstart loser.
My character, Fist Xavier Redlance, has become ultimately powerful. He owns 3 or 4 completely paid for and fortified castles. He and his mount, a 14 HD Cloud Dragon, Phantom, could wipe out Tiamat in one round of combat, or obliterate 5 Tarrasques, or even Waldorf. He's a 60th level Knight, 23rd level Bard, 23rd level Druid, a 14th level Illusionist. His 2 weapons are a mounted Dragon Lance and a +6 two-handed Holy Avenger. He's also psionically imbued. Tell Waldorf that not all the planet was obliterated. Fist Xavier has 2 of his castles completely surrounded by granite, i.e., they're 3 miles underground. The one thing he hasn't done is design a device to clean up post-explosion radiation, but he is currently working on the problem. He can come out because his armor is resistant to just about any substance
My
known to
AD&D
man.
game character, Merv the Outrageous, a 360th level mage who had developed long-range space travel and left his home in the Forgotten Realms, discovered a small barren world. There were only a few inhabitants on it, on a 3x4 mile island with a castle. After infiltration, Merv and his comrades discovered the castle's name, Castle Waldorf. Beneath the castle, working in a salt mine, were the deities of the realm. What a horrible fate! So Merv and his friends returned to their ship and destroyed all of the remaining life on the island through the use of saturation bombing, phosphorus, and anti-magic bombs, and Merv's favorite spell, Power Word Nuke, a 10th level spell. They then returned to the island in radiation gear and liberated the poor gods who, due to their lives among the stars, were immune to radiation at Ground Zero. Unfortunately, the owner of the isle was standing directly
I was
at
a little
Ground Zero
disturbed
Merv's
when I read the letter about Waldorf in issue 137. Well, it just so happens that my 421st level magic user, Alcronus, was in outer space for the last year and just decided to come back to Greyhawk. Alcronus was, of course, ticked off, so he decided to destroy Waldorf and his castle. With his supreme power, Alcronus made the sun go supernova, which completely disintegrated the planet. Waldorf is dead, and I expect the character to never be used again. Waldorf, you should have known better than to mess with Alcronus's
Regret to
alehouse.
inform Waldorf, the magic user, that he is in eternal servitude to Shamroth Darkmane, a 511th level Kryn Minotaur barbarian and his 89-person barbarian horde. Shamroth was on his home plane avenging the destruction of his original barbarian tribe, so he was absent during the Holocaust. Unfortunately for Waldorf, Shamroth returned to his home forest to see that it was devastated. Shamroth then searched for the only safe place on Earth to return from the border ethereal. There were about a dozen more who didn't make the final cut. To be fair, they weren't all over-the-top weirdos. At least one was a low-level character with way too many magic items.
My first-level assassin from Waterdeep in the Forgotten Realms was teleported to the world of Greyhawk. He survived the dangers of radiation with his suit of +5 radiation-proof leather armor. He sought out Waldorf's castle and made it into the throne room while wearing his cloak of elvenkind, then shot Waldorf with his blowgun and a needle of slaying cheaters doused with Type A cheapo poison he bought at the Waterdeep Assassins Guild. Waldorf dropped with one shot. My assassin then freed all the gods under the castle, and they have started to repair and rebuild the world of Greyhawk. I think for this deed, all the people at TSR Incorporated need to send me a written thank you. I also think Waldorf should mail me his character sheet and a list of possessions.
And one just wanted to remind Waldorf who was really the boss.
In response to the so-called wizard Waldorf's recent letter, I will not send my character sheets to Mr. Waldorf, simply because I'm the most powerful being in Greyhawk. Maybe you have heard of me. I call myself the Dungeon Master. And just let me say that I've been getting pretty annoyed with Mr. Waldorf lately, so watch it.
Okay, was the second round of Waldorf content as funny as the first round? No, but it had some solid chuckles, and if the whole saga had ended there, it would have been fine. A cute little story for historians of the hobby. But if we know anything, it's that people just don't know when enough is enough. So 3 months later, in December 1989, Dragon published this letter.
Upon hearing Waldorf's insubordination, I would like to show you a truly powerful character. My name is Thor. I am a 6,253rd level magic user, 25,000 first level cleric, 3 millionth level fighter. I once sneezed and destroyed an entire Forgotten Realm world. So think of what will happen when I wield my 80-foot long sword that's plus 5,682. Waldorf's enslavement of the gods was very unrealistic, since all the gods are servants of mine, and furthermore...
Just to be clear, I'm not the one who cut off the letter. The editors of Dragon had decided that this story had run its course, and decided to cut off mid-letter before this silliness turned into outright stupidity. But you can't keep a good meme down, and they soon found out. 2 years later, in the September 1991 issue, they ran a new troubling development, namely that people had stopped killing Waldorf and started teaming up with him.
Recently, Parave de Tros, a 564th level magic user and 34th level illusionist, teamed up with Maganan White Wolf, a 567th level mage of high sorcery, to perform the greatest deed of 1991, the great resurrection of Waldorf, King of the Nuke. Parave and Maganan travelled to the realms by way of spell jamming, and sought out the cleric known as Darklight Moonbeam. They were escorted to Moonbeam's temple by a fleet of toxic dragons, and welcomed by Darklight himself. After a nice dinner, Darklight allowed them to gaze upon his most recent creation, a Wand of Waldorf Resurrection plus 36. Needless to say, the two mages were speechless. Maganan convinced Darklight to help in the plan to bring Waldorf back to the land of the living. So, Darklight gathered up his gear and his merry band of 100 Kenders in order to depart on a great adventure. After Darklight had used the wand, and the Kender band had found all of the things there were to find, Waldorf was resurrected. But Waldorf had become a lich. The wand had malfunctioned, and just happened to cast a spell that transformed the nuclear man into a mean and nasty undead. Of course, Waldorf wanted revenge on his enemies, who had seemed to come out of the woodwork to kill him. Thus, Parave, Maganan, Hannibal the Minotaur, 46th level warrior, and Nicodemus, 20th level sage, wandered the multiverse, slaying the enemies of their lich leader. The first to fall was Fist Xavier Redlance. Maganan polymorphed Xavier's pet cloud dragon, 14 hit dice, into a salamander, and swallowed him whole. Next, Maganan broke Redlance's Holy Avenger +6 with his ancient hammer of Karas, then finished him off with a 46th level bolt of plasma. Next, Maganan used his ring of Merv finding to locate the human known as Merv the Outrageous. Maganan quickly coughed on Merv's band, infecting them with the horrid burning fever from the Dragonlance saga, then turned to face Mr. Outrageous himself. Maganan won the first attack, and slew Merv with one hit from his sword of infinite slaying. Thirdly, Hannibal captured Shamagroth Darkmane, while Parave killed Darkmane's band of 89 barbarians with his newest 42nd level spell, Spirit Rolling Pin. Darkmane fought Hannibal and killed Nicodemus, who was along for the fun, in the process. Hannibal became mad and ran Darkmane through with a footman's dragon lance. Shamagroth died a coward, screaming for his mummy. Lastly, Waldorf, Hannibal, and their new slave Thor killed the hundreds of other characters who dared to try to challenge Waldorf in 1989. To top it all off, Waldorf and his new twin dragon steeds, Tiamat and Takesis, fought a hard battle with the powerful being known only as Dungeon Master. Of course, Hannibal was there to help in the battle, so the DM died also. So, now that Waldorf lives again, he will begin to control, mold, and shape the world of Greyhawk as he wishes.
At this point, it was clear that things had gone way too far. The joke had been driven into the ground so deep that even Waldorf's Fallout wouldn't touch it. So 4 months later, in the January 1992 issue of Dragon, one noble letter writer decided to put an end to the whole dang thing once and for all.
I've had it with Waldorf in the 100+ level campaign. I'm stuffing a hammer ship with Milbogs and ramming Waldorf's castle. If I act fast, I can catch all of his demi-followers at the victory celebration. The Nilebogs will convert all the damage they take into hit points and wipe out the survivors. The end, I hope.
And amazingly, that was the end. Waldorf was put on the list of subjects that Dragon would no longer publish letters about, right next to banded mail and what would happen if you magically transformed someone into a worm, cut him in half, and then changed him back. Waldorf was never heard from again. Well, once more. In 1998, the publishers of Dungeons & Dragons made an attempt to revive the moribund World of Greyhawk setting with a new sourcebook, The Adventure Begins. It was written by longtime Dragon editor Roger E. Moore, who couldn't resist the chance to throw one more reference out there for the grognards. This version of Waldorf is not a high-omniscient archmage who can bend the atom to his will. Instead, he's a failed apprentice wizard who runs a tavern, known for regaling patrons with wild and unbelievable tales where he conquers the world, only to be overthrown by gods from outer space. Ever diplomatic, Moore showed some grudging respect to his defeated enemy, noting that Waldorf is a master storyteller for a failed wizard, and his grandiose but straightforward lies are the envy of all. Thanks to everyone who contributed their voice talents to this episode. In order of appearance, that's Dorothy White, Robert Seibel, David L. White, Rob Brunskill, A.J. Sutton, Kristen Harkness, Greg Armstrong, Tom Hand, Jim Muniza, and Eric Leslie. Thank you all. I don't think I could have come up with that many voices on my own. Now a quick preview of Series 7. It's shaping up to be a glorious hodgepodge that will take us from Hollywood, California to Soviet Russia, with all stops in between. Just to tantalize you, here are some of the sources we consulted during our research. Baseball Eccentrics, the Burlington Magazine for Connoisseurs, the Encyclopedia of Occultism and Parapsychology, Fads and Fallacies in the Name of Science, 40 Days Without Food, Harpo Speaks, Hartman's Who's Who in Occult, Psychic, and Spiritual Realms, La Russe Gastronomique, and the Pseudoscience Wars. I'd list more, but they'd give away the episode topics, and I'd rather you be surprised. The Ancient and Esoteric Order of the Jackalope podcast will not return on April 7th, as we previously reported. We'll be back on April 12th with an episode we're calling More Lovely and More Temperate. Until then, remember, Quidquid minime sciant, optime scire. This podcast was produced by David White for the Ancient and Esoteric Order of the Jackalope. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 4.0 International License. All rights reserved, all wrongs reversed. The script of this episode, with sources, links, and more, can be found on our website at orderthejackalope.com. That's orderthejackalope.com with hyphens between the words. Keep up with our latest updates on social media at Order Jackalope on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Reddit, or contact us via email at jackalope@orderthejackalope.com. Want to join the fastest growing secret society in the nation? We'll show you our hidden secrets if you show us yours first. Visit our website. Click Join Us for more information. See, it's all about timing and repetition. Funny, less funny, not so funny, unfunny, insultingly unfunny, then give it some time to lay fallow, and wham, out of the blue. Funny again. Always works. Just basic comedy. Oh God, that burns.